complementary aspects of calming, which is known as shamatha meditation, and insight or Vipassana meditation with mantra chanting meditation. And what is a Nichiren Buddhist's perspective on how calming and insight can support and enhance our primary practice of Odaimoku chanting, of course. And I would like to emphasize at the beginning that chanting is a form of meditation itself. So, winter. Life lies dormant, yet the promise of renewal and abundance can be contemplated. And winter could be a metaphor for the three truths: emptiness, provisionality, and the middle way. Because phenomena are empty, they exist provisionally through causes and conditions, cause and effect. Because phenomena are provisional, they are empty of self-nature and non-substantial in essence, and each contains the other in a ceaseless process of creation, mutually contained in the middle way. Meditation's path is the discovery and awareness of this threefold reality, enabling a deep, immersive experience without filter, formation, prejudice, and projection, allowing us to be fully liberated and fully engaged, to be free without suffering. The great Master Myo said, quote, "The perfect and sudden tranquility and insight from the very beginning takes ultimate reality as its object. A single, unalloyed reality is all there is. That all entities are by nature empty is called tranquility. That, though empty, this nature is ever present is called insight." Siddhartha's spiritual awakening was a spiritual singularity, an existential Big Bang. His awakening was his insight into the quantum nature of reality, that what we experience is provisional and made up of unreal components. He taught a way for everyone to have this same insight as he did. And he systematized it with the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, the 12-step chain of dependent origination, and the practice of meditation. I sometimes think if he was a mathematician, he might have come up with the unified field theory. Not to do evil, to cultivate merit, to purify one's mind, this is the teaching of the Buddhas. This is Dhammapada, verse 183. So from that point, 2,500 years or so ago, the teachings have been passed down, changed, transformed, syncretically modified as they pass through new cultures, and in many ways what we see today is a crowdsourced Dharma. It sounds easy and straightforward, right? If you sit down today over a cup of coffee with a Western practitioner of Tibetan, Theravadan, Mahayana, Zen, Pure Land, Shingon, Tendai, Nichiren, etc., you would be hard-pressed to discern the differences in how they spoke about Buddha nature and awakening. The main differences seem to be their praxis and the specifics of their practices. So how does all these disagreements in various sects arise? Is there a right way? Well, we have learned in the Sutra of Innumerable Meanings, there are in fact innumerable paths. And the Lotus Sutra, chapter 2, teaches us to use skillful means to teach according to the capacity of the person we are with. Could we imagine a world where everyone meditated? There is no political solution to an existential problem. Only through deep, sustained mindfulness practices can people develop the wisdom to discern wholesome from unwholesome. Today, in this presentation, I want to share a few thoughts on Nichiren Buddhist's view of meditation. The Buddha taught us a technique, one that worked for him, and he said, "Come try it for yourself." And when departing, he would say, "Now is the time to do as you see fit." But the Buddha was not the first to teach meditation, nor will he be the last. We find meditation and mindfulness practices across the whole world and all the world's wisdom traditions and religions. Mindful contemplation is a human capacity across all walks of life. The Buddha was a yogi before he became the Buddha. He was the most adept yogi of his time. So he knew yogic pranayama, focus on the breath, from the 8 limbs of yoga. Yet even after he perfected yoga, he found it an inadequate tool to end suffering. So let's look at meditation throughout history and across religions. St. John Cassian from the 5th century complained that the mind seems driven by random incursions. John Kabat-Zinn in 1994 coined the idea that mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, and non-judgmentally. William James, considered the founder of modern American psychology in 1890, wrote, "The faculty of bringing back a wandering attention over and over again is the very root of judgment, character, and will." Carl Jung wrote, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakens." Aristotle wrote, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." Francis Xavier in 1622, "If the heart wanders or is distracted, bring it back to the point quite gently, and even if you did nothing during the whole of your hour but bring your heart back, though it went away every time, your hour would be very well employed." And finally, Rumi in 1250 said, "Sit, be still, listen." Now, those of you who have come to our Shodaigo sessions can see already this is very similar to how the Buddha taught meditation. So, what is meditation? Meditation is training our attention. It is just an act of sustained concentration. And remember, chanting is meditation. Meditating is to your mind what going to the gym is to your body. Meditation builds 4 mental muscles: concentration, or calming; clarity, or insight; friendliness, which is loving kindness, which is known as metta, of course, what we did when we were chanting Daimoku for the world; and equanimity. We learn to access and live in the flow state. And a flow state, also known as being in the zone, is the mental state in which a person performing some activity is fully immersed in a feeling of energized focus, full involvement and enjoyment in the process of that activity. In essence, flow is characterized by the complete absorption in what one does and a resulting transformation in one's sense of time. The flow state was coined by the psychologist Mihaly, and I cannot pronounce his name, Csikszentmihalyi in 1975, though the concept, of course, has been around for thousands and thousands of years. And we don't meditate to escape life. That's not what our practice is all about. We meditate to develop these skills, strengths, and capacities so that we fully enjoy life. So when we're chanting, we're developing these mental muscles of concentration, clarity, friendliness, and equanimity, which we then bring back into the entire world. And the ultimate goal of meditation is, quote, "the mindful and dedicated expression of meditative awareness in everyday activities." And this was from Huixi, which is Zhuri's teacher. Zhuri was Tiantai. And he called this meditation without characteristics, meaning meditating anywhere all the time, carried out in the course of whatever one is doing. And this extract was from 2 Buddhas side by side. Carl Jung had a quote, which I thought was very interesting, is that mankind is in great danger, and the only solution is to become more conscious. The only real danger that exists is man itself. So again, I ask the question, what if everybody in the world meditated, chanted? Wouldn't the world be a better place? Isn't that part of what we're doing for our own practice and to share with other people? Dr. Bessel van der Kolk, the author of the immensely popular book, The Body Keeps Score, wrote, "Western culture is astoundingly disembodied, disconnected." And I'm always perplexed why people in general accept that, eating well, getting enough sleep, and exercise are important to be physically healthy, but in general don't view mental and emotional training, meditation, as important, and in fact view the need for such things as some stigma that they're mentally ill. Like being healthy and well, mentally and emotionally is something that happens just because if one is normal, it's just some sort of thing that happens. Like, it's always baffled me. So there are 5 main techniques in meditation. Focused attention, which is shamatha or calming, It's focused on a single object. In general, it's the breath or the sound or some sensation. And, people of all walks use this technique and have since time immemorial. Focused attention, again, shamatha or calming, and visualizations have become popular of all sorts of purposes, wholesome and unwholesome. Athletes use it to focus on their task. Corporations use it to, quote, calm, end quote, and focus their employees to boost productivity and compliance. And the military uses it to improve their soldiers' ability, which we know what that is. The second technique is open awareness, or Vipassana, or insight. Awareness of all aspects of one's body and environment, sound, sensations, thoughts, sense of self by observing and noting, but in a non-judgmental way. So what makes calming and concentration Buddhist? It's when it's matched with insight and the Buddhist ethics and values. This is where Buddhism becomes different than yoga or other things. The Buddhist ethics and values such as bodhicitta, the desire for awakening and the desire to help others awaken. Living in the four divine abodes, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity. Living the Eightfold Path and the six paramitas. Seeking understanding that all life is bound up in the six lower realms of suffering. Mindfulness is being aware that our lives are temporary. We learn to be aware that physical pleasure's happy effect, what modern psychology calls the dopamine response, is temporary and quickly passes. We're training our minds to see beyond immediate gratification, that lasting happiness is based on our heart wisdom that arises when we deeply meditate, connecting with the greater world, understanding and celebrating that we are all interconnected and interbeing. There are many names for this sense of being and connection across all the world's wisdom traditions: Buddha nature, God force, creation, etc., Great Mother. We then will take faith in the three treasures of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha in order to realize the unconditioned nirvana. So for me, the difference between breath-based concentration meditation alone and Buddhist meditation is one's intention. Why are we meditating? Mantra chanting, of course, we're all familiar with that. It's chanting a word or phrase, typically using primal source vowels such as ah, oo, e, o, n. Incredibly effective because of the vibration and resonance stimulating the vagus nerve system. Loving kindness, metta, expressing thoughts of friendliness, kindness, compassion for oneself and others. It's incredibly helpful dealing with anger. And finally, the fifth kind of meditation is visualization, imagining an image, an action, or a feeling. Intention and imagination are the two most powerful capabilities humans have. Psychologists have found that for the brain, imagining and actually doing are the same. It looks the same on an MRI. If you can imagine something, you are experiencing it. If you can imagine something with the right intention and use of skillful means, you can accomplish it. So mantra chanting, a sound that holds a set of meanings, a meditation container of ideas, understandings, and insight. Kamala Shila wrote, a mantra is a word or sound that holds a set of meanings, as complex as synapses extending in the brain, which evolve as we meditate on them. A mantra is a useful hub around which families of ideas, understandings, many insights naturally cluster. The point of repeating a mantra is the same as that of repeated reflection. It holds the attention there, allowing the accumulated meaning to percolate beneath the surface of the conscious mind, and enabling deep transformation to take place. Mantras are therefore essentially about generating an atmosphere of calm receptivity. The same principle also applies to all the many kinds of symbolic representations found in the traditions of Buddhism. For example, statues or paintings of the Buddha, bodhisattvas, and other awakened beings. For the practitioner, these images hold the potential living reality of enlightened wisdom and compassion in a way that words cannot. Images, ideas, and symbols of this kind continually grow in significance in the meditator's mind. Reflection on them feeds insight, meditation, and the results feed further reflection. initiating a spiral of growing insight in reality. Shinzen Young, a Shingon monk and noted Vipassana teacher currently in Toronto, wrote, "Because mantra is a repetitive rhythm, it sets up periodic waves or vibrations in one's consciousness. Let me explain this with a somewhat crude metaphor. You are probably familiar with handheld electrical vibrators that are used for massage. Imagine the effect of holding such a vibrator in contact with the surface of a pool of water. It would impart very regular pleasing patterns of ripples throughout the water. Focusing on those patterns of ripples could easily take you into a state of relaxation. This is one facet of how mantra chanting works. Its repetitive nature sets up rhythmic ripples throughout the meditator's whole consciousness. The meditator then focuses on the regularity of those ripples and rides them into deeper and deeper levels of relaxation, concentration, and integration." The Zen teacher Taigen Dan Leighton, in the book Visions of Awakening Time and Space, says, quote, "Zen shares with Vajrayana, tantric tradition, this hermeneutics of the heart of spiritual activity, praxis, as the enactment of Buddha awareness in physical presence, rather than aiming at a perfected, formulated understanding." In the context of Tibetan Buddhism, Robert Thurman speaks of the main thrust of Vajrayana and practice as physical rather than merely mental. When we think of the goal of Buddhism as enlightenment, we think of it mainly as an attainment of some kind of higher understanding. But Buddhahood is a physical transformation as much as a transcendence. Kukai wrote in 775-ish, "The great founder of Shingon, true word, the Japanese Vajrayana tradition, also emphasized the effects of teachings over their literal meaning. As explicated by Thomas Kusulis, wrote, Kukai was more interested in the teaching's aims than in their content, or perhaps better stated, he saw the aims as inseparable from their content. He saw no sharp distinction between theory and practice. The understanding of a teaching was not privileged independently from its practical effects. The truth of a statement depends not on the status of its referent, but on how it affects us." The Vajrayana emphasizes the expressions of teachings in the three dimensions of body, speech, and mind, via the practice modes of mudra, mantra, and mandala. Now you might really think for a moment Nichiren's three great secret dharmas and how much of a part of our tradition these esoteric teachings are. These practices are enactments of the teachings, more to the point than any theoretical formulation. Language is not an abstract system for analyzing some objective meaning separate from itself. Rather, words, physical postures, and mental imagery are microcosmic representations of the ultimate reality within the human realm. They are expressions of ultimate reality, and by engaging in them, we are led to realization of that reality. Therefore, this function of the mantric quality of utterance becomes more than a mere theory, leading us to recognize the cosmic dimensions of reality as real in our lives. Thus, the performance of the mantra or utterance helps affect an expressive realization deeper than mere cognition. Thomas Kusulis called these truth words. So mantra chanting, and this is what is Nichiren's view of this. How did Nichiren view mantras? And why this mantra? And why does the meditation container of Myoho Renge Kyo really mean? Shakyamuni Buddha, with his great compassion, wrapped his awakening within the 5 characters of Myoho Renge Kyo. All his teachings, practices, merits, and virtues are contained in Myoho Renge Kyo. When we chant these 5 characters, these are naturally transferred to us. This is the heart of our practice and why our primary practice is chanting, mantra chanting. There are wonderful melodic, rhythmical mantras. Om Namah Shivaya, Om Mani Padme Hum, Namu Amida Butsu, Ave Maria, Allah, Barak Atah Adonai. What these all have in common is that they call upon an external higher power, something outside oneself, an other power. The mantra Namu Myoho Renge Kyo is a non-personalized, non-deified mantra. It is an internal affirmation of self-empowerment. Rather than seeking help outside oneself, it calls upon one's own inner Buddha nature. It is Nichiren's genius that he taught chanting as the middle way, a perfect balance of self-power and other power, humility and repentance. As you know, I close every presentation on the Lotus Sutra by saying, everything that we just talked about is contained in Myoho Renge Kyo. Every time you say Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, you're taking refuge in the entire Lotus Sutra. All the parables, all the teachings, all the verses, all the passages, they're all contained in the meditation container, Myoho Renge Kyo. Saying Namu Myoho Renge Kyo one time is like reading the sutra one time. Namu is taking refuge, solace, and sanctuary. Myo is sublime, wondrous, mysterious. Ho is Dharma. Renge is lotus flower. Kyo is the words of the Buddha. The meaning lies in the metaphor of the lotus flower, which symbolizes both the simultaneity of emptiness, dependent origination, and the middle way, and of life itself, since this beautiful flower grows in a muddy pond, which symbolizes the fact that life isn't always pretty and can be downright difficult and messy. But in spite of being difficult and messy, the lotus grows, thrives, flowers, just as we can. Chanting Namu Myoho Renge Kyo is devotion to the Sutra of the Lotus Flower of the Wonderful Dharma. It empowers us to trust that each of us can grow and thrive no matter what is going on around us. Chanting Namu Myoho Renge Kyo immerses us in the conviction that all beings can become fully awakened, happy, and free of suffering. Within our heart-mind is loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, equanimity, generosity, virtue, patience, enthusiasm, focus, and transcendent wisdom, all the fruits of the Buddhist practice. Chanting Namu Myoho Renge Kyo is the practice in which we abide firmly with resolute conviction that we are all Buddhas in a state of clearness, tranquility, and freedom. The Lotus Sutra projects the moral philosophy of Buddha into all the dimensions and regions of space. Creation itself is an inconceivable ethical mechanism splendid with the beauties of wisdom. The real wisdom and message of the Lotus Sutra is not conveyed by the words of the speaker, for it is obvious that its deeper meaning cannot be verbalized. The real message was the impact of the total scene, which takes on the dimensions of the ultimate mandala as inscribed by Nichiren. The words of Buddha merely state the essential structure of the concept. The rest must be experienced. The whole scene suggests a cosmic version of Buddha's own enlightenment under the bo tree. There is an incredible burst of light, as though a psychic atom had been split. The cosmos is revealed like the unfolding lotus, forever evolving, forever maturing, and forever fruitful. Lives are bound together in an infinite pattern of mutual benevolence. The cosmos is revealed as the eternal teacher of all that lives. The vision seen as unfolded in the Lotus Sutra sets forth the physical world as revealed to the perfectly enlightened seer or sage. Physical forms disappear, boundaries of time and space fade away, and all that is seen is the radiance of causation on its various levels of manifestation. Every flower in the field becomes radiant light. Even the physical earth is vibrant with an eternal energy. Instead of a starlit heaven, there is a starlit earth. As in a lantern, every existing creature in all kingdoms is a form enclosing a light. The power that admonishes the clouded world seen by the limited sensory perception suddenly reveals the mystery of itself. Many unseen and unknown types of beings shepherd the several kingdoms of physical nature. No living being is without protector and enlightener. A hierarchy lies behind every veil. In the Lotus Sutra, the psychic mechanism is revealed in its fullest splendor. It is true, indeed, that even the fall of a sparrow is noted, and the little soul finds its eternal refuge in the heart of a loving and protecting friend and teacher. We see only shadows, and space seems empty except for a few sidereal bodies. Actually, we are in the midst of a life which surrounds and penetrates every physical unit of eternal energy. As the psychological aspects of the Lotus Sutra are examined sympathetically, it becomes evident that it is one of the most extraordinary revelations of will consciousness mind to be found in the religious literature of the world. This is from Manly Hall. So, Myoho Renge Kyo, that is what's happening when we're chanting. That's why it's such a powerful mantra. So, which type of meditation is best? There are many references to single-mindedly, joyfully focusing on Buddha, Dharma, or mindfulness of the breath throughout the sutras. Dhammapada verse 293 says, who are constantly well engaged with the mindfulness of the body. Thomas Cleary wrote in Clear Serenity, Quiet Insight. This is a Cherie. Pardon me. If there is only one method for contemplation of the mind, what should you do when confronted with a variety of mental conditions? It would mean you have lost the opportunity for individualized practice. If you use only one method to instruct others, this would be insufficient because the capacities and natures of other people are diverse and not the same. Most of Buddha's references to meditations were very vague, and perhaps relied on his assumption that in his time everyone knew about mindfulness of the breath, so he felt no need to teach the basics. I'm just speculating. I also think he was deliberately vague. How can you describe and codify the eternal, infinite, indescribable? You have to be vague to leave room for growth and application in new places, new times, new cultures and contexts. Again, it's like the Buddha's awakening was a spiritual Big Bang that spreads and grows and changes over time as it passed through new cultures. Buddhism absorbs the culture's teachings. New knowledges add to what we knew. Buddhism becomes crowdsourced. And if the teachings and practices really work, and people genuinely attain awakening, are they not Buddhas? Is this not Buddhism? Are they not teaching Buddhism? This is the idea behind the Four Seals. The Four Seals of the Dharma were, of course, the three marks of impermanence, suffering, non-self, which characterizes all phenomena, and with the addition of the perfect peace and equanimity of nirvana. Any teaching that conforms with these four seals can in fact be considered authentic Buddhism. And again, we don't meditate to escape life. We meditate or chant to train ourselves to live purposeful, meaningful, and enjoyable life. Sutras and commentaries encourage us to use skillful means and know our own and fellow Dharma siblings' needs. Good spiritual friends help others find their Goldilocks zone. Not too much, not too little, just right. Using methods in accordance with contextual conditions, finding balance between calming and insight. Hopefully, avoiding being dogmatic, formalistic, and fundamentalist about any single method. I have personally found over the last few years that calming is what my friends and fellow meditators need the most. The world is very troubled. People are very agitated. We first need to stabilize ourselves. And calming is the first of the 6 meditation gates, as Juri taught. And again, from the Fundamentals of Buddhist Meditation by Tien Tai. As for the Dharma of Nirvana, there are many paths of entry into it. However, if we discuss those that are crucially essential, they do not go beyond the 2 dharmas of calming and insight. Calming suppresses the fetters. Insight cuts off delusions. Calming is the cause of the meditative absorption. Insight is the cause of wisdom. The Lotus Sutra states, the Buddha himself abides in the great vehicle. Such dharmas as he has realized are adorned by the power of meditative absorption and wisdom. He employs these in delivering beings to liberation. One should realize that these 2 dharmas are like the 2 wheels of a cart or the 2 wings of a bird. If the cultivation of them becomes one-sided, one immediately falls into error-ridden ways. If a person is one-sided in the cultivation of calming and neglects insight, this results in delusion. If one indulges in insight and neglects calming, this results in derangement. If you by nature have much greed and desire and are seething with passionate afflictions, klesha, so that even as you try to control and overcome them, they increase all the more, then you should merely allow your attention to go where it will. Why? Because if the evil obscurations do not arise, you cannot cultivate contemplation. This is another way of looking at bono soko bodai, that the afflictions lead to awakening. It is like going fishing. If the fish is strong and the line weak, the fish cannot be forcefully pulled in. But if you let the baited hook enter the fish's mouth and allow it to swim around, diving and surfacing freely, then before long it can be reeled in. Cultivating contemplation in the midst of the obscurations is also like this. The obscurations are the evil fish, and the contemplation is the baited hook. If there are no fish, then the baited hook has no function. It is put to use only when the fish are numerous and large. Only then is it rewarding. Then all the fish will follow the baited hook and not reject it. The obscurations also will not offer resistance for long, but will be brought under control. So, insight. How can you tell if an insight from your subconscious is some kind of wise guy? Yeah, man, you should do this. Do what I tell you to do. Like this is, from The Sopranos. Or is it a wise guide? Someone who is kind and compassionate. So when we get these insights, how do we know that this is something wholesome or unwholesome? Well, I would like to say, first and foremost, that therapy is an excellent complement to one's practice. Teachers, like Michael, they're not therapists. And even if a teacher is a therapist, one would not mix therapy with meditation practice. Practitioners should not use meditation as a therapy substitute. We're going to finish today with a whole slide on what can happen with meditation imbalances. And the Buddha did teach 5 techniques to manage unpleasant thoughts, which can be found in the Nikaya. The
Majjhima Nikaya, the middle-length discourses.
Middle-length discourses. And these 5 techniques, and we won't go into them today, but first of all, think positive. 2, understand the harm that these thoughts are causing you. 3, distract yourself with something else. 4, analyze why these things are arising. And 5, willpower. If all else fails, get in front of the Gohonzon and start chanting. But so going back to this idea about how do we know? How do we know? Does one know whom to trust and what to trust? Whether the inner voice is the wise guy or the wise guide? And the timing for this question is perfect for next week's presentation on the Lotus Sutra, chapter 15, Bodhisattva's appearance from underground. I won't go into more, but you can see there's a metaphor here happening. I think you'll find next week very entertaining. Carl Jung said it best, trust that which gives you meaning and use it as your guide. Viktor Frankl wrote, the more one forgets themselves by giving themselves to a cause, to serve, or another person to love, the more human he is and the more he actualizes himself. What is called self-actualization is not an attainable aim at all, for the simple reason that the more one would strive for it, the more they would miss it. In other words, self-actualization is possible only as a side effect of self-transcendence. And Paul Tillich wrote, faith is the state of being ultimately concerned. The dynamics of faith are the dynamics of humans' ultimate concern. So how do we know and how do we trust? Well, we trust in Namu Myoho Renge Kyo and we trust in the Gohonzon. And if we use that as our guide, we will know that the insights we get are wholesome. So quickly, and we're almost done, is becoming out of balance. It's called meditator's disease, and all of the great teachers have talked about this. It's one of Buddhism's great open secrets. In this winter's magazine, Tricycle, Winter 2021, it's a great article about it. I would highly encourage you to do it. It can manifest itself. You could, in fact, compare it to a strained muscle that can lead to agitation, anxiety, panic attacks, depression, headaches, pain, other physical reactions. And there's a whole story about what happened when the Buddha taught the Satipatthana Sutta to a group of monks, and where he asked them to contemplate the decomposition of their bodies. And they would just sit there, and he was hoping that by realizing that your body is impermanent, you would not become attached to temporary reality. And he went off to practice on his own. He came back, and several of the monks had actually committed suicide. And he was like shocked. And he asked, well, why is this? And they said, well, they became so despondent and depressed that they no longer love to live. So he says, well, okay, let's stop. And he taught another technique called the Anapanasati Sutta, which is a much more positive aspect. But it does bring the idea that we must understand that chanting is powerful. As the Lotus Sutra says, take this good medicine. Chanting the Dharma is medicine. Too much is not better. Just like not enough might not work, too much can in fact not just be just as bad. Many confuse mental illness with enlightenment. They get, bipolar is a great example of that. The highs and lows of being manic. You feel like I know everything, and then you crash down. And sometimes people can mistake these for the four jhanas. I'm going to fast forward. So the idea that I want to emphasize in all of our practices is to seek balance between effort and ease. If things are feeling a little too hard, maybe it's time to back off a bit. If feelings are feeling a little too easy, maybe it's time to press the accelerator a little bit. And only you can know that in a conversation with your teacher, Michael, or perhaps if you're in therapy, bringing these two things together. And of course, as I just mentioned, find good spiritual friends who can surround you and provide you with good, wholesome input. And finally, again, be open to therapy as a complement to one's practice. So in summary, we go from this black and white world to this world of full technicolor with our meditation. Meditation cultivates our inner capacity to advance from darkness to light, from debilitating attachments to a knowing wisdom, from blind selfishness to insightful compassion. With regular, sustained meditation, we train ourselves to feel clearly, see clearly, and think clearly. We go from black and white world to one of vibrant color, allowing us to be fully liberated and fully engaged, mindful of form, feeling, mind, and phenomena, allowing us to feel clearly, letting go of emotional attachments, to see clearly, responding to circumstances in a more positive and wholesome manner, and to think clearly, acting with wisdom and compassion. So no matter how rocky it is, there is always a potential and hope for personal transformation through meditation. Life is strong and tenacious and will burst up through the toughest and strongest rocks to come forth from underground and blossom, just like will happen in chapter 15 next week.